Celebrating a nobody today. Today is so-called Martin Luther King Day. He's the only holiday named after a person. I mean, Columbus Day, which of course a far greater human being. He discovered a continent. Uh, a true titan. But along with Columbus, we could be celebrating like 10 million other white men who have contributed uh, to humanity much more than this nobody by the name of Martin Luther. He's a nobody. I mean, what did he do? He marched. I mean, we celebrate the so-called uh, black heroes who didn't do anything, right? Rosa Parks, what did she do? She sat on a bus. Martin Luther King, what did he do? He just marched, right? He just walked. Uh, Harriet Tubman, what did she do? She ran. So we're celebrating people who sat, who walked, and who ran. Can you imagine that? I mean, they're like nobodies. And then you have like, I'm sure they would want to have like Malcolm X, who's like, who was this criminal, was a bona fide criminal, a thug, uh, a hoodlum, typical of his so-called community. By the way, blacks don't have communities; they have hoods. Community is something that white people have. Community is something that people help each other. You go to your neighbor, you're low on salt or sugar. You go to your neighbor and you borrow some. And your neighbor comes to you in the summertime and borrows your lawnmower, and then you go to him in the wintertime to borrow his removal machine. And that's a neighborhood. Now you don't see that. You never see that in black areas. What you see in black areas is criminality. Uh, it's kind of like they got what they deserve. Many times when you watch the 6 o'clock news, pick up the newspaper and you see all this like crime, this gang warfare, taking place on Martin Luther King Drive. The murders, rape, this, carjacking, kidnapping. They all take place at this like now. All these black areas. They have to have their heroes. Malcolm X, um, Boulevard. And Marcus Garvey. That other thug. They gotta have streets named after thugs. Uh, but they get what they deserve when you hear always this like crime, this vicious, vile, criminal offenses, taking place on boulevard and streets and named after King and X and Harvey and all this and all this. Uh, a few years ago, you had a bunch of black radicals in Brooklyn. This guy, one of the city council represented by the name of Charles Barron, and he wanted to name some of the streets after Sonny Carson. I don't know whether you know who Sonny Carson is. Sonny Carson was really this black so-called activist. They're really a criminal. When you hear the word activist, black activist, it's got to be like a thug criminal, right? And Sonny Carson had an interesting idea. I mean, it just goes to show you the incredibly stupid, ignorant population that you're dealing with. So this thug had the bright idea that in some of the black neighborhoods, he said they didn't have any black merchants. There was like this row of businesses, and so they didn't have any black businesses. And he had the bright idea to simply confiscate at least half of the businesses that were in the hands, really not even of white people, mostly Jews and Asians, Indians and Chinese, takeout places. And he wanted to hand over, to him it was only fair, just hand over half of those businesses to the blacks, to the black population there. It's only fair that blacks would have businesses. And the best way to do it, in his mind, was to simply confiscate from the legitimate owners and just give it to them, give it to the blacks. Now, the stupid ass did not understand that if you were to do that, you know, all those businesses would just go uh, out of business. All those black owned businesses now, they would just go out of business. Because, when you own a business, you have to work like, 12 hours, 18 hours a day, right? You have to get up at like, 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the market and pick up the food and whatever. You gotta know what you're doing. And you gotta work hard. Something that, of course, his ilk is totally uh, unfamiliar with. And so this is what the ass wanted to do. He wanted to confiscate other people's business, give it to the blacks because it's a black neighborhood, not knowing what the consequences were. And that's what you're dealing with: stupid, dumb idiots, lazy criminals, violent, uh, you name it. All the bad adjectives that you can find in uh, in the dictionary, in a thesaurus, apply to this population, and that's what you're dealing with. Just dumb idiots.